through the judgment I have about myself, about these sexual issues, then I'm going to start to really work on this addiction and work on my desire to actually be free of it. Then I would just be in the place that I'm actually in now, which is actually experiencing fear about those things. And once I did that, I would not be acting in addiction or denial or causing more harm to my soul or to other people's souls. But because I judged it, because I thought, no, I can't see this about myself, I can't really be that bad a person, that was my judgment of it, I then created more and more events, and God had to bring me more and more events to help expose that inside of me. And that was because I wanted also to feel like I was getting somewhere. I felt I needed to be better than I was. I felt I had a role, and all these other emotions that I didn't want to face also. So there is so much power in just right now recognizing maybe I'm not as evolved as I think I am. Maybe I'm living in huge amounts of denial and addiction because, hey, I live in the Western world. It's pretty much geared around these two things. Our whole society is geared to help us remain in denial or addiction. So if I'm looking at that logically and realistically, I'm probably in a lot of denial and addiction. And then if I look at the people around me and I can see they've got pain in their lives about these things, perhaps I might have some addictions that are helping me avoid that pain. If we can get to that place emotionally and say, okay, addiction is where I'm going to have to start. Emotion is going to be beneath emotion, not thought. And if I'm just willing to look at addictions and work through these emotions of judgment I have at myself, then I start my soul work. Then it begins, not before. Francine.
How do you work on the, I feel I'm the step above, that the denial is starting to fade.
Yes?
And how do you work on the judgment of the addictions? Because that's where I am now.
Yeah. I mean, I just had to begin to recognize that I'm treating myself in a way that God is not even treating me. So it began almost as an intellectual process of, okay, I'm recognizing addiction inside of myself and then I'm just judging it. And that's actually shutting me down. It's actually self-punishment, which is something I learnt in my childhood to help me placate people around me and into thinking that I was a nice person again. But also, I recognized that as an addiction also, in that it helped me avoid what was really going on. So every time I saw an addiction, I would just berate myself for being a bad person. And that just got me away from what I was really afraid of.
Can I add something there too, babe?
Yeah.
There's two primary problems with judgment of our addictions. The first one is that we're not recognising that God only creates good things. So the reality is that all of us here, no matter what our addictions are, at the core of us is just a good thing, only a good thing, in fact. And that's what God created. That's what God's trying to lead us back to, that good thing that God created. So the first belief that we need to reinforce in ourselves when we have trouble with it, recognising our addictions and being open about them, is that God didn't create a bad thing here. So these bad things that are in me came from somewhere else. They're not a part of my core self. I feel what happens for a lot of people is that they believe the badness is a part of their core self. And so that's one of the reasons why they don't want to recognise it. The second thing I feel that creates it as well is this feeling of that I'm somehow flawed, and that's the reason why I have this particular addiction. And what we're not doing there is we're not recognising how the addiction arrived in our soul. And how it arrived in our soul was through events that usually occurred from the age of 7 and below in our life. That's how it arrived in our soul. So it actually arrived in our soul through events that are related to the environment up until a certain point in time. And then our choices that we made from those events later, of course, contributed to the addiction now being in our soul. But the core reasons are all related to our environment. And so what we have a tendency of doing, I feel, is placing responsibility, blaming ourselves, when the reality is the environment created these addictions. And if you had been if you'd grown up in an environment with no addiction, then how likely would it be that you have these addictions? It would be quite remote, wouldn't it? Likelihood. The third thing I feel we need to do with those two first things, so those two things that I've just mentioned, is understand that unfortunately, even though the environment has created these particular addictions, and even though God did not create them inside of us and we're pristine inside, we need to just find that pristine person. Even those two truths are true, the only person who can feel anything about that's inside of ourselves is ourselves. So even though other people have been responsible for the creation of the badness, if you like, or the evil emotions that exist within ourselves, only we ourselves can actually clear it out now by a choice. We need to take an action ourselves. And I feel once we understand those particular things and remind ourselves of it, because there are going to be times when you feel bad, certainly, because it's terrible when you notice certain things inside of yourself that are unloving. But what we need to do is remind ourselves, God never created me this way, and I can return to the person God created by taking responsibility for what's in me, even though other people have created it, and feeling my way through it so that I can release it. And then you'll have far less blame of self in the process. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. That
In what we see in each other, but rather we want to know what the other person sees, then can you see that the benefits of that to our complete soul are going to be so great that we're going to be able to just be freely open with what we see, each of us, and then in the end we'll be able to work our way through that emotionally. We're not attacking each other. It's not counterproductive. We feel like we're growing together and we're getting closer and closer together as a result. And in the end, anything Mary says to me, instead of feeling like, oh, that was an attack and that was another disapproval and that was another thing, that it feels like, no, Mary's desire in her, which I can feel now, is this desire that we progress. At the start of our relationship, Mary's desire was quite different. It was desire to attack, pull me down, turn me into something she wanted me to be, which is very, very different.
and maintain a facade, even to myself. And that's something probably that I wanted to say to everyone around the issue of what we're talking about today, denial, addiction, and judgment of self. The biggest thing that happened for us to both get on the same side of the fence, was to give up this sense of judging myself. Because every time AJ would say something to me, I would judge myself. And in the beginning, I'd perceive he was even judging me. And that gets tiring and horrible, and you don't actually want to be in that place. And so that's a big block that Francine pointed out before to recognising your addictions, is this judgment of self thing that happens. Something really crucial that I worked through around that, in addition to what AJ talked about before, it was actually, it was facing a fear. And the fear was, I remember we were lying in bed one night and I just said to him, you know what my biggest fear is that underneath all of this, I'm just actually a bad person. That I'm gonna try and heal, and I'm gonna discover actually I am bad, I am flawed, and that I can't actually heal it. It's just me. Now that sounds simple, but it was massive for me. And that's when he said the beautiful words.
And can I point out too that Mary felt that emotion?
Yes.
Like she actually cried and sobbed about the fact that she felt that inside of her she was just flawed. And she just let herself feel that's the truth. She let herself feel that.
Yeah. So I cryingly told you that and cried about it. And AJ said to me that beautiful thing that he said to you before, which is, darling, I'm not worried because I know God only makes beautiful things. Now, that one truth, if you can face that fear and feel that fear and let God give you that one truth, that underneath it all you are beautiful, then that is like such a huge gift to me. It's like I was writing in my journal the other day, it's like a precious stone I carry in my pocket. And I take it out sometimes and I look at it because it helps me remember, yes, God made me something beautiful. Even if I don't feel it now, even if I'm terrified of facing this thing about me that's in me now, I know that God created me beautiful. And if you can let that truth enter your heart, you can go a long way. That gives you a lot of courage and a lot of faith in facing yourself in these early stages where it feels quite icky. Why am I do I really do that? Do I really want that? Am I really like that? That's what it feels like some days.
And you'll be open to the truth
Yeah.
about yourself.
Because you'll realise it's just an injury in me. It's not who I am. And we're so used to in our society believing what we are now is who we are. And that's why we try to create these big facades of I'm someone wonderful, I'm someone capable, I'm someone beautiful, I'm someone, all these things, because everyone judges us. That's who we are. Whatever we present, that's it. Not we're a work in progress, not we're someone growing, not we're someone who can develop. That's who we are. And it's not the truth. And so if you can let that truth about that how God created you, not the truth you've created about yourself, if you can let the truth that you are a beautiful creation of God, that's in one of the first lines of the prayer for divine love. If that can enter your heart, that can take you such a long way.